Hello, this is Douglas Becker. Welcome back, everyone, to the Becker Code. Today, we're going to cover the most foundational principle in all of Indigenous medicine. It's the quantum foundation for all of life, vitality, and longevity. It's also the main influence for certain individuals in how their body actually works.
Douglas Becker is the world's top expert in Indigenous traditional medicine.
When a client comes to me, I do my best to listen intently to what they ask and address exactly what they say their main complaint
Douglas
is.
Becker, he is considered the Sherlock Holmes of medicine.
Integrate Chinese medicines, Indian medicines, is for us to learn more about them.
In the last video, we spoke about hot and cold body types that were dominated by oxidation or catabolic vulnerability, and body types that were dominated by anabolic or anaerobic conditions in their vulnerability. Not being able to compensate for hot or oxidation, not being able to compensate for cold or anaerobic conditions creates a certain type of challenge for each of those body types. The force which allows that hot or cold to increase or decrease is the same force that we call the wind. And that force is often likened to the processes of the nervous system. However, it's much deeper than just the nervous system. It's actually what gives the hot the ability to increase or decrease, and what gives the cold the ability to increase or decrease. So everybody has anaerobic conditions that they're having to deal with and dysaerobic conditions that they have to deal with. Their ability to respond to that is compensated, and that causes what we would call a hot disposition if they can't compensate for that heat, or a cold disposition if they can't compensate for that coldness or that anaerobic anabolic state. The energy that the body uses to compensate, that energy and that information is all in this same concept of the wind. That's why a lot of people translate it as being, the nervous system, but it's much, much, much more than the nervous system. It's the information that's being passed through the body, the coherency of that information, the ability of that transmission of that information, and the ability for the different parts of the body that are giving the information and the different parts of the body that are receiving that information. This is all governed by the wind, meaning that when we harmonize or balance the wind, it creates kind of like a sheen on the reflective quality of a lake. The water's not disturbed. So the information that's being transmitted or received is clear. The disturbance is caused not just by stress as we think of it. The inability to compensate for stress is the vulnerable aspect of the person with a wind constitution or wind kind of body. Each body has all three different things happening. They have a hot and cold that needs to be balanced, and that balancing component of information and the digestion and interpretation of all the information, that wind component is also present in everyone. However, with a person with a wind constitution or a wind body, it's the primary thing that they have difficulty with. They can deal with hot, they can deal with cold, but only to the level that they are feeling harmonious in their beingness, and that's easily disturbed. With a wind person, they're very easily disturbed by stress. So stress can be physical stress, something's going on in the body, or an accident, some kind of invisible forces or energies or feelings that a person has. It can also be emotions that they're having. It can also be the sense of self, like the sense of your identity. Like, why am I here? Who am I? Like, what am I doing here? All of this influences what we call the wind. The relationships that are occurring inside and outside, and our interaction with those relationships are all affected by the wind. They're all the clarity and the efficiency of those relationships are affected by our ability to harmonize our wind. So if we go outside and we walk down the street and we get into a confrontation with another human being. The way we resolve that, the way we process those feelings, process that relationship and that occurrence, can either bring us more resilience, like more of a developed neural network from that experience, or it can disrupt us and start to break down all the other neural networks that have been formed with this like background noise of this stress, like of confusion. You know, when we get sad or depressed, there's a certain energy that's moving us in that direction. But in a cold or anabolic type of person, that consistency or that density of that feeling is consistent. It's gonna keep moving that way. Even though the energy that's involved to allow that is the wind, the stress of that wind or the stress of that situation isn't really moving that person out of their direction of becoming more stable, more dense, more slow. The other side of things, the hot side of things, when a person is, say, getting angry, all that energy that's allowing them to get angry, as that anger increases, that it's also, there's a consistency with that anger. The experience of consistency is something that the wind body doesn't have. It's always changing. It can start to get angry, but then it switches and now it's sad. Or it starts to get sad and then it's confused and now it's angry. And there's no real consistency. And that's the problem for wind type people. They're very creative. They can come up with new ideas in a moment. But being able to carry that through and have consistency is an issue. Not just in the thinking, but also in the way the body's information is being produced. So if something needs to be healed, you want consistent energy and focus on that wound, for instance. However, if the wind is in a very vulnerable place in the person's body, it'll be difficult. So you can think of it like, say you're a hot type of person and you get angry a lot. You tend to have all these different dispositions of hot vulnerability. Yeah, you're vulnerable to oxidation. You're vulnerable to loose stools and diarrhea. You get hot. Say you have a wound that's being healed. If you get stressed, if someone stresses you, now you're going to start to have some anger move around. You'll try to be sharp but the stress is going to be creating background noise. And that wound, you could say, or that illness that you might have is going to be more difficult for your body to show up, even if you do the right things for it. If you do the right things for it and you don't have any stress, things will work very clearly, just as planned. It's predictable. Having a wind constitution in your body means things are very unpredictable. Sometimes you may be hot, sometimes you may be cold. And so to balance that is really important, to focus on that. Just like when we are trying to focus on balancing fire, we're trying to make sure that we're consistently having things that help cool us down. In the same way, when you have a wind condition, you want to be consistent with doing things that help you return back to a rest and restored feeling, where you're relaxed, where you're clear, where you're developing habits and rhythms that keep the stress at bay. Keeping it harmonized so that when stress does come up, you can process it, you can integrate it into your system without disruption. Just like if you're cold, we're trying to incorporate more warm things and activities into our life. At the same time, if we get stressed on top of that, the things won't work as good. So whether you're a hot body type, a cold body type, or you have this wind constitutional body type, every body type benefits from looking at the wind, looking at how you're stressed, looking at how you define why you're here, having a mission, having a purpose, being online with your destiny. This is very important for every body constitution. For the wind constitution, it's extremely important, okay? The things that we want to use when we're dealing with the wind constitution have to be heavier, okay? It needs to be heavy. It needs to not be dry. Yeah, we don't want dryness to increase. So we usually increase oiliness, yeah, for the when you have more stress, okay? You want heaviness, you want oiliness. You don't want to move so much. Moving increases the wind. You don't want so many light things, so many rough things. You could look at it like your life. We can say, do you have a rough life or do you have a smooth life? Yeah. If you have a rough life, like you're living in a car and you're cold, it's wintertime and you're trying to like get comfortable, this is very rough and this is going to increase the wind. Okay. It'll mess you up whether you have hot, cold, or wind. You really want to have consistency and a rhythm. You want to be calm. Talking is very helpful, talking with friends, but not being too excited, not getting too excited about stuff, limiting how much information you're allowing in. Yeah, every piece of information is really affecting you a lot more deeper than the others, because you're very vulnerable. Low blood pressure is something that's very consistent with people who have a high probability of being imbalanced in their wind, whether they're hot, cold, or wind. When a person is always having low blood pressure, they're going to always be hypersensitive. They're going to have bluer days, less energy. Their body will have a lot of different problems hormonally. Autoimmune issues, all this stuff where there's confusion in the body will start to be part of their pathology, part of the things that they're going through that's disease. Immediately you can help that by taking warmer foods, maybe easier to digest foods, things that aren't so rough, aren't so light, that are heavier, and being consistent. You might even want to eat 4 or 5 small meals in a day. So these things are very important when you're dealing with a wind situation. Whether you're hot, cold, or you have a wind constitution. Oftentimes we have a mix. We might be hot and have a wind also in the background with our constitution. We might be cold and have some wind in the background with our constitution. Sometimes they even say traditionally that you can be hot, cold, and have a wind thing at the same time. Yeah, this is in Ayurveda. We call this tridoshic. It's difficult, but everything becomes easier if you make your blood pressure strong. It shouldn't be too high, but it shouldn't be low. Okay? It needs to be strong. Keeping that strength in your blood pressure actually creates a stronger electromagnetic field around your body. And it helps you with everything. It helps you not be so sensitive because your identity, your actual electromagnetic identity is stronger. When you have low blood pressure, you're trying to incorporate the environment a lot more. So toxins, chemicals in the environment, you're going to be taking those and incorporating those into your body more when you have low blood pressure. Same like emotions and feelings and energies. All this stuff is going to be very overwhelming. Someone with really strong blood pressure, they could almost get hit by a train. They stand up, they dust themselves off, and they're back to normal. They haven't changed. They're still consistent with where they were, what was going on before. A person with low blood pressure, the wind blows and now they're on a completely different path, and it's causing more and more and more stress for them. So oftentimes people with a lot of wind are trying to mask their stress using substances or other things that aren't really doing the trick. Yeah, you can oftentimes find someone with low blood pressure eating a lot of sugar because the sugar is building up in the blood and giving it some more density. But what you really need is mineral, and you really need is protein, and you get both of those from strong digestion. You may be eating a nutritious diet, but if you don't have a healthy digestion, you won't be able to assimilate those nutrients. In the next video, we'll talk more about digestion. We'll go deeper into that. But right now, just understand the whole way you feel about yourself, the way you feel about life, the way you process emotions. This is influencing your stress, the stress that you feel and the stress that you don't feel, even deeper stress, subconscious stress. From, the dreams you have to visions you've had or weird experiences you've had in the past. All these things leave an impression. And so this causes disturbance in the medium that information is passing from one place of your body to the other. And that medium needs to be clear for your body to really not have confusion about what to do and show up completely. There's another aspect of, like, if you have a mission, you know what you're doing, and that mission isn't including helping others in kind of the web of life, in the quantum field that we all share, your cells, traditionally speaking, your cells don't really show up to do their full job. They hold back. As soon as the mission is defined through your activities and communications and relations as helping other people, the information not only becomes clear, but the reception of the information becomes clear because of the integrity of the identity of each cell showing up to do what it knows it should do. Because the way the universe is put together and everything complementing and interacting with each other, as we generate a mission and a purpose that's helping others, the cells of our very bodies will also show up more. It's the most natural place, most comfortable and safe place for them to be. This is also part of the wind. So prayer, good relationships, authentic relating, all these are resources to give us a type of nutrition that's invisible. The nutrition or the nourishment that it's giving is the clarity of our own body's ability to take care of itself. If you have wind as your main influence, there's a few things you should look at. One is that everything is changing. You don't have no real pattern. Yeah, sometimes you're like one way, sometimes you're like another way. It's changing all the time. Sometimes you're feeling kind of sick maybe after you eat. Sometimes you feel sick while you're eating. Normally, somebody with wind will feel a little sick before they eat. Going without food just makes them feel worse and worse and worse, usually. Also, you'll tend to have colder body temperature. You'll be really sensitive to cold. You'll be very sensitive to sound. For wind constitution, there's different things that you can use that help to balance out the wind. And even if you have hot or cold constitution and you're feeling stressed and you want to create a little bit more coherence with your situation and calm yourself down, there's different things that will aggravate it and different things that will actually help bring it back into harmony. So in particularly, bitter food and astringent foods, they really aggravate the wind. Okay, they're drying, which is something that's not good for the wind. Okay, and they're very light. Okay, so sweet, sour, salty, all these things help to balance the wind. Okay, spicy food has a little bit of benefit, but easily is overdone and can irritate the wind as well because of this the fiery light action of the spicy taste. It can aggravate the wind, so you don't want to do too much spicy, but a tiny bit might be okay for most people. So that's the types of foods and substances that you can take. So if eating salads which are bitter will increase the wind, but if you put like a heavy dressing on it, maybe that has made of coconut oil and some warming spices, not really spicy hot spices, but warming, like a little bit of black pepper, some salt, some cumin, some oregano, some basil. These are all warming herbs and spices. If you have that with some heavy oil, like coconut oil, it'll be really helpful. Even if you have it with a kind of a warming oil, like sesame oil, with your salad, that would be really helpful. But salads by themselves, just greens, will actually, cause an issue because of the bitterness and lightness. You can always add butter. If you have steamed greens and you want to eat steamed greens, add some butter or coconut oil to it. Make it a little salty. This is all very helpful. Soupy stuff as well, like miso soup, can really help calm the wind down. Other things that can aggravate the wind is moving around a lot. If you're moving around and doing chaotic stuff, too much of that will totally uproot your coherency. It'll uproot your stability and clarity within your wind, regardless of what body constitution you have. If you have a wind body, every day You need to really make sure you're getting enough sleep, make sure that you're getting enough nutrition and nourishment, make sure you're not getting too dry. Having dry skin will totally aggravate the wind. Having standing in cold wind will aggravate you. Getting too cold will aggravate you. Too much sound. You know, a person with a lot of wind will have a lot of issues with being really sensitive to sound. Slowing things down, slowing the amount of information as well, so you're not reading too much, not looking at the screen and taking in too much information. All of the different pieces of information are really impactful for a person with more wind in their constitution.